Live autopsy. This sentence is scarier than it looks. Join me as I tell you a painful and extremely terrible story about a cruel person named Jack. Jack the Killer is a nickname for an unknown serial killer who terrorized the foggy city of London in the late 19th century. The murders he committed were widely covered by the newspapers, and even today many documentary programs are made about it and they try to discover the secrets of this mysterious killer. Most of his victims were women who were mercilessly slaughtered by Jack the Killer. In this report, you will read interesting facts about Jack the Killer. There were three main suspects in the Jack the Killer case: a Polish immigrant, a lawyer and a Russian doctor. Interesting facts about Jack the Killer. Jack the Killer often killed street women and girls who came out at night in the same manner and butchered their bodies, making it look like the victims had been autopsied. This is what made the police come to the conclusion that the killer has medical background and experience. Since the murder crimes happened at the end of the week and on official holidays and in the streets close to each other, he formed the impression that he is an employee who has regular and specific working hours. The nickname, Jack the Killer, came from the letters that were allegedly written by the killer himself and sent to the police station. He ends the letters with the signature of Jack the Killer. But some say that such a letter was just a hoax and maybe one of the journalists did it to add more excitement to the story. Historians say that according to research, Jack the Killer was of medium height and strong build and was around 25 to 35 years old. In the case of Jack the Killer, there was no evidence to identify the killer, and the only thing left were the bloody corpses of street girls and women. On the night of September 30th, unlike usual, the bodies of two women instead of one woman were found in the streets of London. This was the first time that the killer had killed two women in one night. It is said that the last crime committed by Jack the Killer was in November 1888. Interesting facts about Jack the Killer. Queen Victoria believed that Jack the Killer was either a butcher or a shepherd. Interesting facts about Jack the Killer. By investigating how the bodies were killed, forensic experts never found out whether the killer was right-handed or left-handed. Interesting facts about Jack the Killer. After the murder of the last victim, Mary Kelly, Jack the Killer's crime spree stopped. No one understood why he stopped killing women. Was he dead? Was he imprisoned for another crime? Or did he stop killing based on his personal decision? 11 separate murders. These murders started on April 3, 1888 and continued until February 13, 1891. These murders were known as Oriental murders in the criminal circle of London City Police. There are various theories as to whether these murders were committed by one person or not. But according to the law, 5 of these murders were committed by Jack the Killer. 1 Mary Ann Nichols. It is said that this woman was the first victim. She was a citizen of London and married to a man named William Nichols. Her husband left her after the birth of their 6th child. William slowly began to have a secret relationship with a woman in his neighborhood named Rosetta. In the meantime, Mary had become heavily addicted to alcohol. He went to work on a dark and scary ship where many women worked. She slept with many men on this ship and prostitution was her last option for survival. He slowly entered a very dirty swamp. On August 31, 1888, he became homeless and had no money left. He got a job in a brothel and was given some food and a place to sleep in exchange for prostitution. At 2:33 that day, the other prostitutes saw her in a place where she was very drunk. He immediately went to Osborne Street in East London. This was the last time anyone saw him alive. At 3:45 in the morning, 2 men saw Mary's body. They thought she was a prostitute passed out from drinking too much alcohol. When they got close to Marie's body, they saw that her throat was torn and her body was covered in blood. He was murdered in a strange and brutal way. His stomach was torn. The police searched for his killer for a long time, but could never find a clue. 2. Annie Chapman. This woman was killed more easily and with less violence. He lived far away from East London. He lived part of his adulthood and even after his camp in the Windsor area of London. This area is close to the British Royal Palace. This may not show that he was a rich person, but from his living place and his household items, it can be understood that he was in complete economic prosperity. She and her husband, John, took a photo of themselves in 1869, and this photo is the only real photo available of one of Jack the Killer's victims. In this photo, you can see the luxurious clothes and decorative items of his house. In the 1880s, he gradually distanced himself from his family and started drinking alcohol. In 1888, he fell into severe depression and turned to seclusion and isolation. On September 5, 1888, he had a heated argument with a woman named Eliza Cooper. Their fight was over a bar of soap. Annie's face was seriously injured in this fight. His body was found 3 days later in Hanbury Street, London, dripping with blood. There were no clues to his murder. 3. Elizabeth Stride. A boat was sinking in London's Thames River and Elizabeth was struggling to survive. He was able to save himself from drowning by grabbing the heel of the person in front of him. In 1878, he lost his wife and children in an accident in the Thames River in London, but he himself managed to survive. He was born in Gothenburg neighborhood of London and studied there. A dirty neighborhood where life was very difficult. A dark and incomprehensible future was in front of Elizabeth. After her marriage, she migrated to West London and rarely came to the East. She lived a quiet and comfortable life with her husband and was slowly moving away from her previous hard life. But that painful incident made him return to his previous life. He was brutally murdered on September 30, 1888. His body was so dismembered that forensic doctors could not easily identify him. His stomach was horribly cut open and his intestines spilled out. 4. Catherine Edwards. If you had been in Aldgate Street at 8:30 on September 29, 1888, you might have seen Lewis Robinson sitting on his feet, lurking in the dark. A large crowd had gathered, but no one knew him. He lifted Catherine off the floor and took her to a corner. Catherine was very drunk that night. After spending several hours at Bishopsgate Police Station, Catherine was released from prison. He did not tell the police his real name and immediately left the police station. Exactly 45 minutes later, Catherine's body was found. His body was horribly mutilated, but there were no signs of a crime or a murderer. A part of Catherine's skirt was also cut. Blood covered the lower parts of the body. In London, serial murders had provoked public panic and women did not dare to be in the streets. But there was no news of murders for a while. Did the killer stop killing women? 5. Mary Jane Kelly. Among all the murders, Mary Jane's was the most mysterious. His death brought the name of his grandchildren and future generations to the fore, but his past is still dark and unknown. She had a relationship with a fishmonger named Joseph Barnett and many incidents happened to her. Researchers are still investigating his past. It is said that there is a photo of his body after his murder, which his family does not allow to be published, and it is kept in the central office of the London police. Like most of the victims killed by Jack the Killer, Mary was a prostitute. She was being prostituted by someone she had a relationship with. One night in the brothel, a voice was heard from Mary Jane's room, but no one paid attention to it. In the brothels of that time, it was normal for women to be punished by their customers. But an hour later, his body was found on his bed. Mary Jane was the only one who knew the killer, but with her death, the identity of Jack the Killer remained hidden forever.